Digital 410 proudly presents the What's the Scuttlebutt Podcast with your hosts Don Abernathy, Jeff Copsetta, and Henry Sledge.
Welcome, everybody, to another episode of the What's the Scuttlebutt Podcast, your favorite World War II-based podcast, and we are back for another week. Where has the time gone? I can't believe we're almost a little over halfway through year number 5 of the What's the Scuttlebutt Podcast. That's right, we launched in 2018. And joining us since, episode 95 and a half or 95 and 3/4 is longtime co-host Jeff Copsetta. Jeff, how you doing today, sir?
What's going on? It's 95 and 15/16 actually. That was the episode. Yeah.
Good thing we didn't switch to metrics. I know we had some meetings and we were talking about being on standard gets people, everything's metrics now. But I'm glad we stuck with the standard issue. Speaking of standard issue, we'll get to that in a second. Talking about a good segue. Jeff, how you doing, friend?
Good, yeah. For those of you who know me, y'all know I love my coffee.
Boy, howdy.
My coffee in a WTSP
coffee mug.
But let me tell you, our guest tonight, Mr. Nick Ledet, he's from Standard Issue Coffee, where they are roasting coffee, one bean at a time, over Standard Issue. And Nick, before we go into who you are and what you do, I gotta tell you this, okay? When you first started following me, and I'm looking at Standard Issue Coffee, my imagination takes me back to CIF. When I think Standard Issue, like issue one each, right? So for civilian CIF, that's your central issue facility, right? You go in there, they don't care what size you are. They give you the stuff and then tell you to move on. So I'm thinking like a Standard Issue Coffee, like this comedic, like, hey, what size boots are you? I'm a
size
90.
9, like everybody else.
Half triple E's. I don't want to hear it. Cry to your congressman. Next. So I thought, like, okay, I want one bag of like medium roast, and you sent him like 60 pounds of dark roast, finely ground. Like, here you go, Standard Issue. Cry to your congressman. Next. Standard Issue is not like that, right, Nick?
No, it's not. But that's awesome.
His accountant wouldn't like that very much. That would affect their overhead greatly.
Yes, it would. No. So going to that Standard Issue, that was my first thought was Standard Issue. Like, what's something that every soldier gets? TA-50. Well, for the listeners, civilians out there that don't know what TA-50 is, that's your issued gear. Well, every soldier gets TA-50, no matter who you are, from private all the way to general. It doesn't matter. So that's kind of the story behind that. But yes, I like that. You can go talk to your congressman. You're next. I like that.
Here's some marketing ideas for you. One, just a standard brown bag that says coffee on it. Just coffee and stencil. Probably wouldn't sell too great. But two, when Jeff was talking about Standard Issue Coffee, for whatever reason, when he was talking about, he was giving a description. For some reason, I had this flashback, but instead of the guy who gets KP duty peeling potatoes, that's what it was. You said they were roasting beans one at a time. I imagine some poor schmuck with a pair of tweezers and a lighter roasting one at a time. So if you can get your graphical artist department to do like a cartoon rendering of some poor bastard on KP duty, but instead of peeling potatoes, he's using a big a Zippo lighter roasting one coffee bean at a time. And you can plaster that on the back of a T-shirt. We'll give that to you. That's our gift to you for coming on.
Somewhere out there's going to be a drill sergeant listen to this episode. He's going to be like,
I like that. Yeah.
And there's two levels. If you're kind of an ass, it's a Zippo. If you're a real ass, it's matches. Damn it.
Dang it. I like that. I'll put that in the back pocket. I'll remember that. I like that. Thank you.
So let's go back a little bit in your history. Where did you grow up, and what got you interested in enlisting in the services?
Yeah, so born in Colorado. I was an Army brat, so moved around to Fort Hood. Actually, I got to see where my dad's old unit was here, and then moved to Kansas. That's where my mom's from, and then grew up in Kansas probably since I've been about 3. So. It's a real small town, about 1,200 people. We graduated from a 4-way stop sign to a blinking red light. So that was cool to see the progression in the town. And then, like I said, my dad did 27 years in the Army. And I just knew at one point that I had to do my duty, and I joined when I was 20 and almost 10 years in October. So, been an 11 Bravo infantryman the whole time in the National Guard. So it's been great serving this country and serving Kansas as a whole, and just doing my duty to serve the people. So,
man, that's awesome. And you said the town you're from in Kansas is about 1,200 is population, pretty small town, you said?
Yeah, population. Graduated with 24 people in my class. 2 of them were foreign exchange students, so roughly 22 since kindergarten. Our high school was across the highway from a cornfield.
Nice.
Like farming community all throughout. So grew up in the small town roots, hard work, work ethic, all that, and still to this day just put my head down and work for what I want. And so
that's awesome. I mean, I'll be honest, I didn't think there was 1,200 people in the entire state of Kansas, so I'm actually a little
oh no, it's no, you're correct. I mean, the town I live in now has 900 people, so,
and 3 stoplights.
Wow.
No stoplights.
My mom still lives in a small town called Warsaw, Kentucky. It's right on the Ohio River in northwestern Kentucky, right across the river from Indiana. 1 light, as you were saying. The closest thing they have to a fast food restaurant would be a Subway or a Dairy Queen. That's it.
We don't even have that.
And since it's in northern Kentucky, every harvest season for tobacco season, the school shuts down so the kids can go home and pick tobacco for their parents and their family.
Yeah, I know for us it was most of the boys and some girls would skip school for hunting season.
Mm-hmm. Well, hell,
and then
didn't have to skip school. A lot of people just put their rifles in their trunks and went to school, and then went before and then went right to school.
Yep, exactly.
You know, it's funny. My cousin grew up in Chillicothe, and he graduated a few years between me, and I saw both sides of the spectrum. I went to his graduation; he had 25 people. My graduation 2 years later, I had 550, and my last name starts with A.B. And the only other person graduated before me was Abbott and Addington. My poor parents had to sit through the other 498 people because it would be considered rude to get up and walk out. So when your kid's at the beginning of the alphabet and you got that many kids, that's a long, long procedure.
That is. Oh man.
So how old were you when you enlisted?
I was 20. I went to college for 2 years. Ran cross country and track on a scholarship, and then I decided to join the Guard because thankful that my dad let me use his GI and 9/11 benefits, and that portion ran out as I have siblings that used it too, and so I was like, well, I can't really pay for school anymore, so I need to do my due diligence and pay for school on my own. So I joined the Guard.
Nice. So I don't want to get off your service, but I'm really curious more about standard issue, man. I mean,
yeah, that's true.
Yeah, I mean, there's so many soldiers now that, or servicemen, I should say, that are starting these companies, man, and it just seems like they pop up and they go away. I mean, okay, yeah, we've all heard of Black Rifle and all that stuff, right? That's great, but kind of walk us through. You know, I mean, I know you didn't do it by yourself, right? But so kind of walk us through that process. I mean, how does that even begin? How do you get it to where it's at now? I mean, I'm just blown away by somebody who, like yourself. I mean, it's not like you're sitting at home, working from home, whatever. I mean, you're serving, you're in uniform. So how does this kind of come about?
Yeah, so let's go back to the roots. So I was deployed in 1819, and didn't
a long time ago.
Right?
That's what I was saying. It's like, well, that's right around Billy the Kid time, I think.
2018, 2019. Started drinking like more so the black coffee rather without the creamer, and I just fell in love. And then when I got back, fell in love with I went to a rabbit hole of the different brewing methods of, a pour over espresso, how to do a pour over like scientifically with all the grams of coffee.
Well,
How
let's
much
pause
water,
right there
water.
real quick, because I was thinking about this earlier today. When it comes to like diehard coffee aficionados, I'm not talking about the people like myself who roll through Starbucks every day and get some sort of fancy milkshake. But when it comes to straight up legitimate coffee and pouring, I've seen somewhere it looks like I've seen these places these artisanal places that look like a science lab where they have beakers and tubes, and it's like you got to have the water at the exact right temperature, and it has to soak into the coffee grains for exactly 2.5 minutes. And what is it about the temperature of the water and how long it makes contact with the coffee grounds to get the premium taste? If that's not getting too crazy.
No, you're good. So essentially, you'll want to be anywhere between 195 degrees to 205 degrees of water heating up, right? That is just the optimal temperature for the water to extract the coffee from the beans. Especially, you'll get this in a pour over method, and it also depends on the coarse of your beans. So if you grind it too coarse, so there's bigger bits of coffee, then you're not going to get the correct taste of coffee. Or if you do a finer coarse, so like espresso, it's real thin and small, right? And you do that same course of beans with the water, then your coffee's going to taste totally different than what the other end of the spectrum. So the science behind it is basically there's a rhyme and a reason to different brewing methods have different variables that you have to meet in order to get that type of coffee. For instance, espresso, you'll want a finer grind of coffee because the amount of pressure coming from the espresso machine pushing through to extract that coffee. That's why you have the finer ground of coffee. For a French press, you'll do more so of a coarse grind. You put that in a cup or in the French press, and then you add hot water, mix it up, let it steep for 4 minutes, and then you put the filter down through it, and then you pour out your coffee. There's a lot to it, but if you can hone down the basics, you can get a really good cup of coffee.
What's a basic, obviously basics of Mr. Coffee, but what's a basic entry level for people who say, okay, I want to get away from just filling up a coffee pot, putting in a filter, setting a timer, and walking away. I want to kind of get into the more nitty gritty, more almost kind of like a wine, like someone who drinks wine. They got the decanter, they know the smells and this and that. What's like a basic step first? My first coffee kit for someone who like yourself. You're saying, and I'll get back to this question after, and this will follow back to the other question. But you're talking about when you discovered that you enjoyed coffee without a creamer, which is very important. But I don't want to get tied up on that yet. So what's a basic starter kit for someone who, oh, wow, I do like coffee and I want to try different flavors, but I want to get the most out of those flavors other than just putting in my Mr. Coffee and percolate the shit out of it.
I would start with, this is my opinion. Now others that's their own, but I would recommend getting a food scale, 1, 2, a kettle, and then 3, a pour over filter, like a device that goes on top of your coffee mug. And then the pour over method, I think, is easier to obtain the taste to actually taste the coffee beans, right? Now the pour over method, there's a little bit of leeway in order for you to experiment, in my opinion, to get the taste of coffee you want, right? So I would make sure to measure out between 16 to 18 grams of coffee, grind it up a medium coarse grind, and then make sure to have your kettle heated up, and then you can YouTube this too.
Sure.
But the pour over, I think the pour over method is probably the easiest, in my opinion, to get a basic entry level into the rabbit hole of coffee of what it is. Once you get that basic down, and you'll start experimenting with the mocha pot, which is an espresso that pressurizes going up instead of coming down through the espresso machine. And you can do that over a campfire or anything like that. But yeah, I think the pour over method is probably the easiest in my opinion, but it takes a little bit of more equipment to use. And if you just have a basic fundamentals on how to do that, you'll have a more of appreciation of the different methods that you can pull coffee. And I think that's what I actually didn't start that way. I started with the French press. Just the different taste in coffee. I was like, oh man, this is different than your Mr. Coffee coffee pot, right? With Folgers. Like, started buying like Rival Coffee, and others started getting into the smaller coffee companies that were out there. And then I was like, you know what? Why don't I just make my own? So, but
how
that's
long
a long.
been,
Sorry, what?
how long has Standard Issue been around?
So the idea came up probably 2 years ago. Just an idea. It was one of those like, hey, why don't I do something? Like, I'm tired of, not saying I'm not tired of the Army, but I'm tired of, working for someone. Maybe once I retire, I want to have something where I'm my own boss. And so I started thinking, well, maybe like I run marathons. Maybe I want to be a running coach. No, that's not it. And then I just kept circling back to coffee. Like the amount of coffee I consume is would put me in a hospital.
Yep.
And so that came about probably, it really didn't come to fruition until about last year. I didn't file for an LLC until September of last year. So and I was by myself. And that kind of catapulted me into like, okay, we're actually doing this. All right. And from then on, it's just been figuring out as I go, and here we are.
Now, since you're in your cell, and I'm assuming your partner too, both have a taste for black coffee without the creamers and that. I'm assuming you guys tweak your flavors. You have, find the beans that give you that best aroma and the best flavor. But how do you guys, I guess, deal with knowing the fact that so many people who are going to buy your coffee are just going to pour that gelatin glop of coffee made in there and just completely destroy all the time, energy, and effort? Because people are addicted to that stuff. And I used to be one of them. I used to be one of those cats from the age of 18 until 35-ish. I would coffee made bloop, bloop, bloop. It wasn't until I started World War II reenacting, and I woke up at like 5 in the morning after freezing my ass off, and somebody had made a coffee on a camp cook. There was no creamer around it. And that's how I actually started drinking my coffee black, was at World War II reenactments, because I'm not going to sit there, I got to go find some coffee, mate. Guys, hold on. No, it's just, and now that's all I drink. At work, I drink water and black coffee. That's it. But just there's so many people that's addicted to this stuff. And it's like,
yeah,
to have a coffee like what you guys are doing in the world of the coffee mates and the fake coffee at Starbucks. And, now they can buy all the Starbucks crap in a can and all that. How do you guys try to position yourself into that market share to kind of get your message out about, hey, there's actually better ways to enjoy coffee?
Honestly, I think the way we do it is word of mouth. And I truly believe that word of mouth is the best marketing tool you'll have in a business. And if you get enough people to realize, hey, there's better products than the big corporate companies, then people are going to realize, oh yeah, I love supporting small business. I love supporting veteran. I love supporting Kansas small business. And I think that's kind of what's kind of jump started us a little bit, is because people know that they know the owners. And I think in the days of where we are now in social media, we've been trying to use that as a tool to expand our audience a little bit too. Um, and I haven't said this right now, but I do thank you guys for allowing me to come on here and share my word and talking to you guys. So I do appreciate you letting me come on and talk about my Standard Issue Coffee Company.
Thrilled to have you on, and we're thrilled to see with what you're doing and what you guys are trying to achieve. I guess number one question when it comes to coffee, though, is where do you procure your beans from?
So we get our beans from a company down in Mississippi that they get shipments of green coffee. So for the listeners out there that don't really know the history behind coffee, coffee starts out in a cherry actually, and then it gets washed or dried naturally, and then gets the cherry taken off, and it comes in a green bean. Green bean comes through. We roast it to light, medium, dark roast, depending on the temperature, how long it's going to take. And then if the consumer wants the ground coffee or the whole bean, we'll bag it up and ship it to your door, and you have a great cup of coffee. But we get ours from Mississippi. Hopefully one day we'll have a partnership or agreement with some farmers down in the South American and other countries where they grow coffee. So that's the goal. That's one day. That's me being a visionary, it'll happen, but not right now. So we get ours from a company down in Mississippi that sources green coffee.
Go ahead, Jeff.
Yeah. So, of course, and again, Don already said it, but yeah, I mean, we appreciate you coming on, man. This is awesome. And I know probably some of our listeners have been tuning in for a little while, like, guys, this is a World War II podcast. Let's get back to it. What I was thinking about some of your techniques is, man, a lot of that is maybe similar to how you had to make it, right? The pour-over method, how you had to do it 70-some years ago on a battlefield. It's the first time I've heard Don talk about drinking black coffee because of being a World War II reenactor, and I think that's interesting. I mean, I didn't drink coffee till I joined the Army because it was kind of one of those things, like I need something other than hot water to drink.
Yeah.
And so it is what it is, and then I just got hooked, and yeah, just the black coffee. That's where it's at. But there's a history to it. Coffee's always been a big part of a soldier's life, as far back as probably history goes, right? I mean, I think about even prior to the Second World War. I think about even the Indian Wars in the 19th century. Guys living on coffee and hardtack. Like that's what you got. And
right.
Yeah, you didn't have a nice little handy bag of finely ground, dark roasted standard issue coffee in your saddlebag on as you're in the industry. You just had beans. So I think of things from a historical perspective. So it's interesting to think the way coffee was made back then, and then we went through all of our technology, and like Don was saying, Mr. Coffee, and now it's almost like we're going back to how it was done originally anyway, to appreciate, like you're saying, to fully appreciate the actual, the coffee bean and what goes into it and how it should taste. So it's interesting to me to see that that full circle,
Right. Yeah. And funny you should say that. I'm glad you brought it up, because I don't know if you probably have scrolled our social media page, especially on Instagram. Where I work out of, there is actually where I work out of is Emporia, Kansas, which is the founding city of Veterans Day.
Wow.
Yes. And so there is a huge veterans what's the word I'm looking for?
Appreciation?
Community. Yeah, community appreciation, right? And so there's this big event that happens every year. And I got, actually, before I started the company, I got a good relations with a World War II reenactor. And so a couple years went by, and I was like, hey, I started this company. I need some content, right? I need some stock photos, videos, and stuff like that. And he agreed, and he got all in his World War II reenactment, and we went for a photo shoot and found an old busted down bank in a rural, like small community. Took some pictures there, and it just reminded me, like, we made coffee on the spot, and he pulled out a World War II coffee maker, and we made coffee right there with a World War II burner, and the pump where you're pumping up the gas to get it going, and then or the propane, and then roast made some coffee, and then it just clicked in my mind. I'm like, wow, this is living history, like right before me. The fact that I get to do this with someone else that appreciates not only the history of our country, but coffee as well. So I'm glad you brought that up, because that was a good day to be around that type of sense of community in a sense, and then, believe it or not, like, I went to last Christmas, I went to New Orleans. I went to the World War II Museum, and I was trying to find some coffee related stuff, and then I stumbled upon how their coffee rations were. It was, you got 2 pounds of coffee for a month. I think it was something along those lines, but just the fact that I was like, oh man, 2 pounds, I go through that like a week, maybe two, if that.
Yeah,
That's actually more than I would be. Actually, I mean,
say that again.
That actually is more than I expected it to be, considering rationing back then. I mean, 2 pounds a month doesn't sound like a lot, maybe for today, but for your average Joe,
I think that was for the field kitchen, because I'm looking, and it looks like the standard C ration came with a powdered coffee, and it was 5 grams of soluble coffee. So it was almost like the precursor to the instant coffee that we had in the 80s, Sanka,
right,
if you will. No, I was just looking at Standard Issue's Instagram as he was talking about that, and a particular living historian that he had do this shoot. It appears that he's so accurate with his airborne uniform. He actually has a gas impregnated gas protection version. People will actually go all out with the guys who are really in the airborne stuff. They don't just put on the airborne, they actually put the whatever. Some people use Vaseline, whatever. He actually has the gas impregnated version of the jump uniform. So his impression is on spot.
He said that it took him over either a day or 2 days to put that on.
Yeah, I can imagine so.
And in his war room is what he calls it. Unbelievable.
Yeah, he's got M19 1930 cal here, just like the one that I carried through the Hilton. And keep in mind too, let's go back to World War II, and coffee actually has caffeine in it. It warms you up. It kind of gives you the sense of normalcy, gives you and your foxhole buddies something to do in the downtime. But more importantly, the caffeine. Soldiers back then weren't all hopped up on Red Bulls and Bang and caffeine chewing gum and all that stuff. The reason they were given Hershey bars was for the caffeine and the sugar rush. And so that coffee and the chocolate bars, because that was their key, that's the only way they got caffeine back then. That was a huge part of being on the line and, being able to stay awake and alert. That was the source of energy. They didn't have all the extra sources like we have nowadays, unless you're on the other side of the Rhine and then you had your little tablets with crystal meth in it, but that's for them, not for us. So the Allies, we were relying heavily on the chocolate bars and the coffee. So coffee definitely has gone, as Jeff was saying too, gone way back.
Yeah, absolutely. That was a big part of. I mean, it was a meal, right?
Yeah.
And that's why it was in every K ration and everything. I mean, that's just, and it's in every MRE, or at least it was. So, yeah, there's an interesting connection there. And so Nick, I wanted to ask you too. I know we kind of touched back and forth, but I kind of missed. Uh, Don kind of alluded to it. So you've got a partner in crime that helped you
Mhm.
start it or has joined you.
Has joined. Josh had joined probably around March timeframe of this year. He liked the idea of what I was doing, what I envisioned for this company, and so he hopped in, and him and his wife have done great things for us as far as uplifting and uh, getting the website. Revamped the website, and then just producing content, getting stuff known to people, just the ideas that are flowing. It has been enormous for their help getting this company to where it is. We're small, but we're envisioning great things ahead.
Cool. Well, hopefully, if Josh is listening, good job, and keep up the great work. And I will certainly do what I can to help out. I get invited to quite a few living history events or open houses and air shows to perform and different things like that. So I'll definitely do what I can in the World War II community because yeah, I mean we're I think I speak for a lot of reenactors when we would much rather be supporting a kind of a smaller up and coming business as opposed to some big commercialized thing, something that's just hey, you feel good. You're buying this from Staff Sergeant Ledet, Kansas Army National Guard. That just has that's a great feeling as opposed to let's run into town and like you said go get this freaking Starbucks or whatever. I'm not a Starbucks fan. I just the mail that I received, the chain mail, hay mail that we got from freaking Starbucks when we were over there, no, not gonna walk in there. I'm sorry. It was a long time ago. It was a long time ago. It was almost 20 years ago I deployed, but it still sticks with me. I can't get it out. But
And real quick,
anyway,
I got to get it out there because WLVN 1940s radio pointed out on YouTube. Hey guys, don't forget the Navy. Yes, coffee played a huge role on those ships. I mean, imagine being in a submarine, just all you're hearing is ping and just staring at walls all day long. You need that coffee to wake your ass up, and especially.
But you have to drink it, and Don has one, right? Do you have it handy? The traditional Navy no handle, the white mug that you see in every picture. Don's gonna get it now. I was so jealous, Nick. I mentioned this to him. I said, "Man, I have a lot of stuff, right? I'm a huge collector of World War II. It's World War II. I've either got it.
This is like the one thing that I have
me.
that Jeff is jealous of. This is actually Corningware. This is the Corningware, made in the USA. It's the what do they call that? The guy who sat up in the bird's nest. It's the Watchman's mug. Yeah, they call it the Watchman's mug. There's no loop on it. That way it keeps your hands warm. And this is actually made by Corningware. And the only reason I bought this is I was up in the last event I did. Jeremy and RJ came down from Georgia, and they had two of these, and they're drinking. Actually, they had three, and they offered me one. And Jeremy's like, if you come across these anywhere, scoop them up because they're getting harder and harder to find. And I just so happened to be surfing eBay like the following week, and it came up. And my favorite thing to do on eBay is get people while they're sleeping. I'll search what I'm looking for and hit ending the soonest, and then I'll wait until late at night or like right before. And I'll have a price point set in my mind, but I love just to grab stuff that other people missed out on that I know that there's people looking for. But like this, I got this at such a great price because it just went under the radar. But it just makes me happy that Jeff wants it so bad. And it's the only thing I have in my collection. I did drink out of this for like 2 weeks in my office, but I brought it home and put it in my cabinet.
That's awesome.
Now, standard issue, so cool. You guys have some merchandise too, right? You've got some coffee mugs with logos and things, right?
So that was we got stickers. That's about it. As far as coffee mugs, as you see in the pictures, that was the testing phase. We haven't gotten enough mugs yet to remake those mugs. So, but thank you for pointing that out. I know that we need to get those out. But I actually just got patches made, leather patches made. So I'm gonna sew them on a couple of my hats and see how they look. And if I like what I see, then maybe here in the near future, maybe some hats might be dropping. So, but as far as merchandise, not yet. I'm still doing most of the roasting and whatnot. Everything still flows through me, and so the tight ship is still setting sail. So we're not there yet, and I don't want to be there yet, just since I'm getting ready to do more adventurous things here soon, and we're not at a stage yet to do those types of things. But it's on the map. We're talking about it, but not yet. So.
It's a process. It's a
It
process.
is a process. Being a business owner has its ups, but also many of its downs. And especially if you start out by yourself, it is.
Don knows all about that.
Yeah, I ran my own business for 18 years, and I would tell people the only difference between working for yourself and working for somebody else is you're the asshole you have to answer to. If you're not working, there's no money coming in, so there's no paid vacations. And one of the key benefits, at least for the first 5-6 years, unless you just get really lucky with something that everybody wants to have right now, people who don't run a business or never, they just assume, you have a business, money's just swinging in. For the first few years, it's you'd make more money working for somebody else, but it's owning a business is really meant for those people who can't bring themselves to work for somebody else unless they find somebody who's a lot like them. And my father and I started our own business in 2004, and then in 2012 I got a part-time job working in radio, and you don't get much more corporate than that. And I realized, now I remember why I went and worked for myself. Because I love the radio, I love showing up, producing, being on the air, but all the other crap I just couldn't stand, and it was happening when things started changing in corporate America. It's like, you got to come sit through this sexual harassment seminar. It's like, I've never sexually harassed anybody. Just like I'm not an alcoholic, so I don't go to AA weekends on the meetings on the weekend. So I would just log in on my computer and just leave the room. I'm not participating in that crap. But these are all corporate checkmark things. And so running your business is really, if you're not self-motivated, if you're the type of person who fights to get out of bed in the morning and wants to go to bed early and wants to do all these things on the weekend and all your free time hanging out with friends and all the good stuff, running a business is not for you. That comes later.
Right. Yeah.
And so, but
no kidding.
We made it up. We made
Keep it up.
No, you've been going. You have the motivation. Obviously, your commitment and the things you do that got you to where you are in the military. That in and of itself is showing that you're not lazy. You're self-motivated. Obviously, in the military, you have people giving you orders, but you have to be self-motivated to fulfill those orders. No one's going to follow you around all day unless they're screaming your freaking head at boot camp to get those orders fulfilled. You got to do that. You got to find out what your mission is, and it's up to you to complete it. And running a business is the same way. You get up in the morning to look at what are my end goals for today or for this week, and I got to figure out how to get it done. No one else. And it appears that you have those traits. Real quick.
I appreciate that.
Let's get in the running real quick. Jeff's favorite topic. You were talking about do you run marathons at all? Have you gotten back into running?
I've ran 7.
Full marathons or half marathons?
Full.
How old are you?
29.
Okay, when you get in about 35, you'll start getting interested in ultra marathons because you'll realize I'm not getting any faster, but I can run further, but concrete hurts my knees, and I like running in the dirt. So you might start looking at ultra marathons, but don't sleep on the obstacle course racing. I've done 5 Savage races and a virtual Spartan and 2 Tough Mudders before I got hurt. I'm just now getting back into running because I got hurt for a while and gained a bunch of weight back, so now I'm trying to get back into it. But my goal, I've ran 1 half marathon, 10K, a handful of 5Ks. I just turned 45 last month in June. And because I like to challenge myself and beat myself up, on the first of the month, I wanted to have, and I got 49 miles in 29 days. I'm sorry, 45 miles in 29 days. And so my goal for this year is to run a full marathon. But I'm 45. I spent 18 years skateboarding. I spent 13 years snowboarding. And so my knees and ankles don't have much cartilage left in them. So it's a lot of time in that pain cave. But yeah, if you've never done an obstacle course race, try it. You'll love it.
So I went to one in Charlotte. I saw a Spartan race. I was like, "Ooh, this is different than what I'm used to." My goal, I do want to complete an Ironman someday. That's one of my other goals now. But I don't know. I mean, in the Army, I do obstacles and stuff. Like, I kind of get that, but it's not really for fun unless being in the Army is fun, right? So maybe someday I'll do one. I
have a motivational podcast called the Failed to Fail podcast. I actually had an ex-Navy gentleman on there who does Ironman. Craziest thing, guy was in the Navy, but he hates open water swimming, and he does Ironman. So he says at the beginning of every Ironman event, he's pacing up and down the beach, psyching himself out to get ready for that 2.5 mile open swim. It's like, you're in the damn Navy. How you hate open? Yep. He hates open swim. He just completed another one, God. And I'm about ready to have a female athlete on. I got to reschedule this week. She just finished her Ironman, and she killed it in her time. So I'm very interested in that. So yeah, I mean, I don't know. There's just something about. I tell people I don't enjoy running. Running sucks. I enjoy the feeling I get after the run's done because, and we'll get back to the coffee here real quick, but unless you've done it, I can't explain to people where your mind goes. And for me, it's around mile 6. At mile 6, I can disconnect from my body. My body just goes in auto drive. I mean, if you have problems in your life, maybe you're stressed out at work, you're trying to figure out how to make things work, your kid's bothering you, you get around mile 6 and you disconnect and you will start processing all your life's problems. And so by the time you get home running like a 12-mile, you got a lot of answers sorted out, and you got a lot of things you can get done. It's amazing how much mental processing you do on long runs.
So for me, that's where I do most of my thinking is on runs, morning runs. I don't listen to music when I run. It's the clarity and the silence of my surroundings. So Kansas, I'm running on a dirt road, and I'm running next to a wheat field, cornfield, soybeans, alfalfa, and then a pasture with cows. And so just being able to be in my own thoughts, that's where some of my thoughts for Standard Issue Coffee came from. Like our first Sergeant blend, our limited edition blend we did over Memorial Day weekend. That was on a run, and just the thought behind it, and that was on one of my runs, like I said. So the running can provide solitude if you allow it, and not get into the nitty gritty of the paces and being in the same heart rate zone for X amount of time, or doing so many intervals for at this pace, at this time, for this distance. Like, if you just let running be your go-to solitude place, you will find happiness and enjoyment no matter what.
And it's sad it's sad for multiple reasons that veterans come home and their bodies beat up, even if they don't have any combat injuries, but just the rucking and just all the wear and tear to the body. There's multiple reasons that's sad, but another one you can add to that list is, I know, and I didn't serve, so I'm not, trying to make assumptions, but just from what I've heard from people I know, especially those like I do a lot of reenacting with retired soldiers, and part of the reason for doing the reenacting is the camaraderie and the brotherhood. And one of the other sad reasons that so many people who served, especially as they get older, their knees are bad, their backs are shot, they can't do a lot of things, is don't sleep on a running community. I mean, you could hop in your car, drive downtown to your small town on 5 a.m. on a Sunday, find 4 people meandering in a parking lot, stretching, getting ready to go run. You walk up to them and say, "Can I run with you?" They'll say, "Absolutely." And if you do that 2 or 3 times, you'll make friends, and you'll share that shared pain, suffering. Hey, we're all going to go run 10 miles. We're going to embrace the suck together, and you will get some of that lost sense of community that you're looking if your body's up to the challenge.
Exactly. Well, and that's not to segue into another topic, but that's currently why I'm here at Master Fitness Trainer course, is to change the culture of how the Army runs its fitness. You know, we're starting to get away from the days of, okay, we're gonna go run 10 miles today, and then tomorrow we're gonna go max out squats, or tomorrow we're gonna go do the obstacle course, and then we're gonna come back to do a 5-mile run. And no, long as those days of doing that type of PT. Now it's, hey, why are we doing, a upper body strength day today? Why are we doing a lower body, strength day today? Why are we doing some active recovery? Why are we doing an aerobic long run today? Why are we doing an anaerobic interval run? So to point on that's where my mind's been the last 2 weeks, is we're changing the culture of how the Army runs its fitness, and it's for the better. And long are those days of the being left out of the community for fitness wise, because the Army treated, not saying it did, but in my opinion, the community of soldiers are broken in the sense of their physical fitness, and we're changing that here for the better. And that's kind of where that community comes to, is if we're doing these types of fitness programs and stuff like that, then we're going to have a better sense of community and the spirit of corps and camaraderie within the formation. So then maybe on the back end of, your retirement, or your ETS, or you just get out of service for whatever reason, then you still have that community of fitness, or you still have those people to lean on.
Are they putting more emphasis on the importance of recovery? Because I think, a lot of people who, whether they're hitting the gym twice a day, 7 days a week, or they just got into running, and I did this too. I was running every single day, 3 miles. I wouldn't run any less than 3 miles, and I didn't realize the importance of recovery. Are they, at least what you're seeing, are they kind of incorporating the importance of recovery into PT?
So that's before this new change of physical training, it used to be okay, let's do the cool down drill or recovery drill, and that's it. It's just 5 exercises, and we're in formation, and we're just doing the stretching. Okay, whatever. Go change and get ready for the day. Cool. Now it's the new training fitness program the Army has is called H2F. Holistic health fitness, right? And so basically, we're going to go, not to get into nitty gritty of what we've been talking about, but way off topic, but there's 5 pillars: nutrition, sleep, physical fitness, mental, and spiritual, right? And so the Army now is diving deep into how our body works, both mentally, physically, spiritually. And if our recovery is not to where it needs to be, then the rest of our body is not going to perform at its best to be a tactical athlete. And so the Army has realized, okay, we need to take better care of our soldiers in all aspects, not just pay, not just housing, not just family outreach, whatever. It's the whole sort of concept. And so what the Army is doing is, like, they are getting into the nitty gritty of recovery. So why we need to do these types of exercises or these types of recovery drills to better facilitate blood flow into our muscles to feel better for the next event or task we're going to do the next day. So sorry to get on a
we'll finish up the physical fitness topic with this. Don't sleep on as we hinted to about running, but it was my personal cure for depression. I mean, growing up, the childhood I came from and the things I experienced, I was horribly depressed and just all through my teens and early 20s until I started, whether it was going to the gym or running or whatever. If I don't burn those calories and kick my own ass, if I go a week without working out, it definitely affects me. And so it definitely has a huge, tremendous increase and benefit in the mental health state. Where can people find you on Instagram, Facebook, and your website?
So my personal Instagram is Nick Led, LED 11. That is my personal one for Standard Issue Coffee. It's like I just said, Standard Issue Coffee, both Facebook and Instagram. And then our website, www.standardissue.coffee.
That's cool. So .coffee is now a domain name, a finalizer, instead of a .com or .co or .org. They're .coffees now. That's cool.
You are correct, sir.
Real quick before we get into everybody's favorite segment, Whatca Readin. This podcast did our original format was primarily living history in World War II, reenacting. And every once in a while, Jeff and I will talk about items that will make your impression that little more, whether it's fun, more compelling to the casual observers, or just something to set you aside. And some of the things we talked about in the past, like when I go up to Georgia to do an event, or I went down up to Alabama and do a tactical event, the platoon leaders, whoever's in charge, will actually come with pre-written letters from your alleged girlfriend or ex-girlfriend at that point. And like, you want to be expected to call mail call, and they're handing you letters from some make-believe girlfriend that has this whole 3-page story about how your dog ran away and now she's sleeping with your brother. Just all kinds of silly, fun things. And I recently, one was through Facebook. I'm part of a group who's getting ready to do another Marine Corps event up in Alabama. And the Marine Corps guys that I've fallen in with, some of them are active duty, some of them did serve in the past, and some of them are just living history. But for whatever reason, it seems like the Marine Corps impression crew are always about details when it comes to their impressions. And one of them went as far, and I got one, of remanufacturing the first initial, middle initial, last name rubber stamps so you can stamp underneath your canteen cover where it's supposed to be, on your back of your first aid kit. And so I just got mine made up. I need to stamp some of my stuff. I got to get the appropriate stamp for it. I don't know if you guys can see it, but it says DP Abernathy. And this next one I got off eBay. They claim it's original. I don't care if it is or not, because I'm going to take the staples out and make photocopies. But this will be a great morale boost to hand out to the guys on a long weekend. Especially, Jeff, every once in a while you'll do one of those events where you have like USO Show, so everybody goes, changes, gets in their Class A's, whatever. I got the VD pocket guide for sexual hygiene. And so I'm going to pull the staple out, and I'm going to make copies of this, and I'm going to probably make 50 or 60 of these and give them to the guys who do the corpsman impression. Say, make sure everybody has one of these before they go to the USO show tonight. And so let's just, page 1. A few facts about sex. And this is from the War Department. They claim this was original. I don't know. It says Washington, September 30th, 1942. This pamphlet is prepared under the direction of the Surgeon General of the United States Army and published for the information of the military service in general. A copy will be furnished to each recruit upon enlistment. And it says by the order of the Secretary of War, C.G. Marshall. And then, it starts out with fun facts about your sexual organs. Oh, here's a fun one. We won't get into it. The section 2 is entitled Wet Dreams. So this thing everything that a young boy in 1942 needs to know about sex and how to avoid the burning feeling down below, if you know what I mean. So that's one of the things. I'm going to make copies of this, and like I said, have the corpsman hand out. I'm going to expect to see those in everybody's tents and racks, just to add to the realism of their impressions, if you will. Be great. That'd be great in your Foot Locker, Jeff, right there on the top shelf.
So I don't want to one up you, but I found through eBay a 1950 infantry platoon field manual. So why 1950? Well, that was right after the war, right?
Yep.
And so they are refiguring or revamping the field manuals to be tailored towards the World War II tactics.
Instead of the World War I that they were pushing out at the beginning of the World War II.
Exactly.
That's very, very cool.
Yeah, it was the stamp on the top of it was from Connecticut infantry unit in the National Guard up in Connecticut. So, side note, that you reminded me that I had that in my office, and I'll take a picture of it and send it to you guys. But that's the coolest World War II item that I have, I guess.
I was, and I guess we'll get into it. For Whatca Readin, I'm just about 3/4 of the way through 4 Hours of Fury. Just been super busy, and I'm enjoying the read. But in that book, talking about things that they were given a pocket pamphlet called Something Guide to Germany. And as I was reading it, I did what I always do. I put the bookmark back, and I went on eBay, and I found, I don't know if they're the original ones because they look bigger than a pocket pamphlet, but I think I found that pamphlet, and I might end up picking one up if I can find the original pocket size one. So they're giving these guys this guide to Germany so that, if they get lost or something else over in Germany, they have the pocket guide to Germany, which I did find on eBay, but it looks a little bit bigger than the original one they're talking about because they refer to it as a pocket pamphlet to fit in that breast pocket in your uniform. Jeff, what you reading?
Yes, I mentioned this, I guess a couple shows ago when I first started. I'm almost done. It's the most different book I've ever read on the subject, and it's called Silver Wings. This particular one, I think this was published in 48, I want to say. But it's basically the way it starts out. It's two authors that put it together. Let me see. Yeah, this is from 1948. So this is original first edition. It's a great looking book. But every chapter is about a different exploit or exploits of a specific Air Force during World War II. So what the authors did was they created fictitious people to tell these stories, and it's revolving around a fictitious B-24 waist gunner who was bailing out in the Pacific, and him and his buddy, the other waist gunner, one of their parachutes was totally just shredded from flak. So they're the last guys left in this bomber. The bailout signal's gone off, everybody's out, and they're sitting there arguing why the other guy should take the parachute. And this guy decides to clock his best friend to push the parachute on him and throw him out. But that parachute was faulty, never deployed. The guy that stayed in, actually ends up surviving the 24 splashing in the Pacific long enough to see that he basically pushed his best friend out and he plummeted to his death. So he's withering away in bed. He doesn't want to get buried as a paraplegic. He doesn't have the drive because he feels like he killed his best friend.
I mean, that's like the dictionary definition of survivor's guilt right there.
Right, absolutely. So this fictitious Army major decides that, and this is right after the war, right? He's gathering all of these guys from the Air Corps and taking them to the hospital to tell them, to tell this patient all of these exploits, and all these guys served in all these different air forces, right? So it covers the 5th all the way through 13th, everything in between, everywhere all over the globe. And they're relating stories about, yeah, that buddy that I knew, so-and-so, and that buddy they knew or that person they heard of that they served with are real people. So still what you're reading is these real, stranger, crazier, braver than life exploits of real airmen and what they did all around the world. So it's a really neat book.
Wow.
But yeah, so that's I'm finishing that up, and man, I know you guys have been talking for like 30 minutes about shin splints and venereal disease, but I really been dying to tell you guys about the first time I got to sit in a P-51 like a week ago.
Yeah, when Dennis was on here the other day, we kind of hinted to the audience that we wouldn't spoil your all's adventure too much, that we would let you regale us with your living history event rundown. And so we didn't step on it too much last week, and so we have some time. So please give us the rundown.
Man, yeah. I mean, between that in 1 week, I went from sitting in a P-51 to touring one of only 5 aircraft carriers that served in World War II that's still, still around. But yeah, so the P-51, okay, get invited. There's an open house. It's a commemorative Air Force event down in San Antonio. And it's at Stinson Airfield. It's an old historic airfield, and they've got the Tex Hill Wing. This is the squadron of the CAF that's dedicated to Tex Hill, and they've dedicated a lot of their artifacts, and of course Tex Hill, from Texas. So there's a big connection there, right? Um, every year they have an open house. COVID kind of killed it for the last few summers, so the last time they had one was 2019, and I was there representing the museum I worked for at the time. And so they asked, to see if I could come back. And I told them, I said, I'm coming as me. I'm not representing a museum or an entity. And this is the first time of all the places I've set up at. This is the first time where I was just Jeff Copsetta, man. It was just great. I got to talk, the movies. I got to talk, of course, What's the Scuttlebutt, being a collector. And me and my son were the only 2 guys there in World War II uniforms. So it was really cool. I went Air Corps, Logan went Pathfinder, and had a couple tables. And yeah, they had a P-51 fly in, privately owned one. And just happened to ask the guy flying it. The pilot's not necessarily the owner, but linked up with the pilot. He was fueling up, and I was like, "Man, where you going?" He goes, "Oh, I got to fly. Wherever. Give me like 10 minutes." I said, "Let me go throw some flight gear on real quick." Grab my kit bag. I'm already in my crusher and chocolate shirt and everything, but grab my kit bag, threw the A2 on, even though it was 106,000 degrees. Threw the A2 on, threw the Mae West on, and the guy that invited me down there, just a great guy, F-16 fighter pilot. He was one that took the photos of me all over the hero shot, like Bud Anderson. And then he goes, "Man, go ahead and get inside." And of all the 51s I've been around, I don't know why I've never sat in one, but
are you sleeping on that photo? Because I'm on your Instagram and I don't see the one of you in the cockpit. I think you're sleeping on that photo.
Maybe I haven't posted that one yet, but guys, I got to tell you, now I grew up. My first car was a '92 T-top Trans Am, right? I had that car for 17 years. The T-tops were never on it, right? It could be 28 degrees, the heater's blasting, but the T-tops were off. Right?
I don't want to one up you, but I had a sweet ass 1997 Pontiac Firebird coupe, baby.
Yeah,
but yes, my T-tops were always off too.
No, yeah, I mean, I love them. So anyway, but it reminded me of getting into that car, just hopping in, grabbing the windscreen, and just sliding in. And I got to be honest, getting into a P-51 is like putting on your favorite pair of blue jeans.
Oh, yeah.
I'm serious. Like I'm trying to take these photos. I'm just hopping in, like, okay, great. Tell me what you want me to do, whatever. And I'm like, wait, I got to soak this in for a minute. Like, It's so ergodynamic, right? And I'm a fairly average guy, right? 5'11", 180, right? So I'm probably a little bigger than most of the pilots, right? Certainly way more than most of the pilots, the starving guys that were 130 pounds. But so I feel like I'm a little bit bigger than most of those guys. But still at 5'11", I had unbelievable visibility. And everything was like your hips. I mean, your elbows could be touching your hips, and there's nothing in that cockpit you can't touch, but it's not crowded. I don't know how to explain that, but everything is just like, it's just right there.
Everything's where it should be.
Everything's just where it should be. You're not having to reach. You're not crowded, but amazing. That's the most amazing cockpit. I've sat in some World War II warbirds before, and never a P-51. It tops it. That one takes the cake. It's unbelievable.
Wow. Now, did they sit on their parachutes in the 51s? How did okay. Yeah. Now, was the seat modernized and accommodated for not sitting on the old style parachute?
I feel like it had to have been, and it had a jump seat in the back.
Okay.
They could fly with somebody. So I feel like that's been changed. Because I know the Hellcats were the same way. If you sat in a Hellcat, without your chute on, you're like.
It was like the old lady driving the Cadillac in front of you.
Yeah, or Corsairs, they're the same way. Like you hop in, like you need a couple thick telephone books to sit on.
What's a telephone book?
Right. It's a telephone book. So that was a lot of fun. And yeah, Dennis, and if you guys listeners, you need to go back and listen to Dennis Blocker. He's a great story, great author, great storyteller. He sat in a couple of episodes for us here at What's the Scuttlebutt, and he was nice enough to. I never heard of Bunker 27.
Yep.
He shows up at this event with this goodie bag for me, and it was this Bunker 27 T-shirt with a beautiful nose art of the Memphis Belle on the back, a beautiful Memphis Belle metal tin. I was like, dude, this is great. I never heard of it. Bunker27.com. Check them out because they're coming up all over the country. I think the last one just opened up in Ocala, Florida.
Yeah, that's like
Yeah,
right away from me. Let's see. They got Bunker 27 opens its first mall-based store. Where's this guy at? In Fairfield Commons in Ohio. And then it looks like they have the Houston store, and then as Jeff was saying, they got one here in Florida.
And I know there's one in San Antonio, so they're around. So if you're into that stuff, World War II based merchandise, T-shirts and goodie bags, and
they got Vietnam stuff in here too. They got the Air Cavalry Division shirts from Vietnam. They got modern day logos.
Yeah, it looks like a great business. So shifting to the Navy.
Real quick, before we get off the topic, Gabe is joining in from YouTube, and he's currently reading Lucky 666, and so he's throwing that book in there.
Yeah, and so Gabe is actually he's now in San Diego, serving with the Navy, and I was going to mention as we shift to the Navy, like I said, I was just on board the USS Lexington, which is down in Corpus Christi, Texas here. And there are, I think we looked up, there are 5 carriers from World War II. And I don't think they're all museums, but there are 5 still around. And one of them is in San Diego. So, Gabe, check it out, man. I think it's the USS Midway, I want to say. You'll have to look it up. I don't know if you can board it or not. But the fact that there's only 5 really made it feel special. This is probably my 6th time visiting the Lexington. But it's even a little bit more special knowing that you just don't go on an aircraft carrier that served in World War II, right? I mean,
right.
There's one in, I think, the Yorktown's in South Carolina. There's 2 in New York, and then the one in San Diego. I don't know how many of them you can tour, but the Lex is, it never gets old, right? It's a beautiful museum. You get on this ship, and of course there were 2 Lexingtons, right? We know CV2 sunk at Coral Sea, Lady Lex. And then, so this ship was being made at the time, and there was a petition signed by the workers saying, whoa, we just lost the Lexington. It was made up in Massachusetts. Like, we need to rename this one the Lexington as well. And we did that a lot during World War II. The Hornet was sunk. We built a new Hornet, so on. So this is the 2nd Lex, but its first operation was, and Don, you'll love this, Operation Galvanic. Hellcats were launched off CV-16 USS Lexington to support Marines hitting at Tarawa. So interesting battle history. You go in on the hangar deck, there's a Dauntless, there's George Bush's Avenger, there's, Chow, there's a 3D movie experience. And Nick, you'd probably appreciate this, man. I was never so humbled. You watch about a 30-minute video, a documentary about aircraft carriers, and they take you all the way back 5,000 years ago, triremes smashing each other in the Aegean Sea, right? All the way to today with RIMPAC, which is, if you're not familiar, the Rim of the Pacific is basically a field problem, I guess you would call it, war games, where 26 countries have their navies participate in the most realistic simulation of combat in the Pacific Ocean. The amount of ordnance that they fire is unbelievable. A lot of some of the things were still classified. They couldn't go into everything, but you're there. You're like on this carrier at RIMPAC, and I've never seen an F-35 do F-35 things until this documentary. And I mean, dude, it was so patriotic to sit here on a carrier where you're thinking about guys in dauntlesses and Hellcats that miss the wire coming in, crashing, smashing into stuff. You're thinking about Avengers coming in, gunners shot up, coming on a wing and a prayer. You've got an LSO, a landing safety officer with paddles trying to, get you to land and make sure you hit the hook and cut the power. And then you're fast forwarding in one man's lifetime. You're watching these F-35s create 40,000 pounds of thrust, and they open up. Everything changes on it like a transformer, looks like a freaking UFO.
Yeah.
And in 300 feet, it just takes off from the carrier. And then it can identify everything and knows what Navy it's from or what Air Force it's from, what country. Oh, that's a foe. It just launches stuff at it. It disappears. Everything blows up. And then the guy comes in for a landing and just stops. And then it just moves over and just puts it down on the carrier. And I'm just like, this is no fair. This is absolutely no fair. And this is our Navy. This is our military today. And it blew me away, man, to think about like I said, in one man's lifetime, to go from that. If you imagine a 90-some-year-old carrier pilot watching something that looks like it's centuries in the future. I mean, it looks like aliens came and gave us this technology.
Right.
It's so outlandish almost. It makes me think, like, am I going to be 95 years old and like, oh man, I wish, if a 90-some-year-old, Humvee 50 cal gunner can see this. What else is left? What else is left? What other technology? What is left? It makes me wonder, what is our military going to be like 70 years from now? And the only thing I can, like, the only assumption I can come to is we're so technologically advanced that we've eliminated large wars.
Right.
Maybe that's where it's at. It's, we went from, nothing, Minutemen, to giant navies, to aeroplanes, to jet, to nuclear, everything in between.
War
of
attrition, just
yeah. You can just defy large scale wars because of this show of force and technology. Maybe that's where we're at. I don't know.
Cyber warfare, shutting down people's infrastructures.
It's more cyber warfare now more than ever. Yeah. Side note, I will say I have been to the USS Lexington, but that was 15 years ago. So I need to make another trip now. You got me intrigued.
Absolutely, and it's so awesome.
Even back then, it was like, oh my god, this is huge.
You go down to the boiler room, you see the engines. They've got mannequins set up. You go to the post office, the dentist, the barber, the chow line, right? The machine shop.
Everything.
It's all done up down there, and there's
you
no climate control.
How small everything was. I've done 2 living history tours on the SS American Victory. It's a Liberty ship. And, I'm 6'5", so it's even worse for me. But when you're crawling through bulkheads, going down those stairs, and it's one thing to be going through that in civilian gear. But when I do the SS American Liberty, the Victory ship, I'm in full gear. So I'm walking up those stairs with an M1 Garand slung on my shoulder. After a while, you got to flip it upside down because you're tired of banging your barrel on every damn bulkhead you're trying to walk through. And you got your Marine Corps pack on, you got your helmet on, you got your M1 slung over your shoulder, and you're trying to walk down those stairs and get through those compartments and all that stuff. It's like, oh yeah, this was even, for the average 5'9" guys, this is a tight squeeze. And there was a hell of a lot more guys on board. But yeah, you're quickly reminded of how tight and compacted and small everything was back then.
Absolutely. I mean, it had to be, and it was just out of necessity. And like you said, some of those stairs, the treads are
it's like no OSHA, everything's straight up.
Oh yeah. I mean, it's like straight up and straight down, and you've got a big red leather pad right there as you're coming down, and you're gonna bump.
And that wasn't put in until 1984. Back then, that's why you had your helmet on. We skipped over Nick. Nick, are you reading anything right now? You want to contribute to the Whatca Readin files?
Yeah, for sure. So I will start this back actually last month. We did so for my job as a recruiter, we did a recruiting like photo shoot, commercial shoot kind of deal. And so we got to travel Kansas, right? Well, what's one of the main things Kansas is known for that pertains to World War II?
Oh, I was going to say Wizard of Oz. Other than that, I have no idea.
Well, he was the supreme Allied commander during World War II.
Oh, that guy.
That guy.
Ike's from Kansas.
Ike was born in Denton, Texas, but he was raised in Abilene, Kansas.
Oh, he's from Abilene.
And his boyhood home is still there today. And so we did a visit around the museum, which is phenomenal, by the way. It goes through his life through West Point and the how his West Point class was dubbed the class of the stars, and how there was 25 generals that came out of that class. 2 of them 5 stars, himself and Bradley. And then just the decisions he had to make after World War II and into his presidency and up until his death. On that day that we went, we got to, it was the Army's birthday, by the way, and we also got to witness do replaying on his tomb for the Army's birthday. Fort Riley is the main installation, active duty installation in Kansas, and so they had their commanding general and command sergeant major come down, lay the wreath on General Eisenhower's tomb, and then we got to explore the museum and stuff like that. And so what brings me to that is anytime I go somewhere like this, I want to read about the person, the place, anything, right? And so the book that I got it's called How Ike Led, because I'm an infantry guy. I have a squad of soldiers underneath me. Maybe one day I'll become an officer. Don't know yet. But for me, leadership is one of those things that I need to improve myself on. And so I've read many books on leadership, but I wanted to go back to how Ike led, in the sense of his important decisions on not only in World War II, but post-World War II. And so I started reading that, and then this course kind of happened, and I led up to this course. I studied for this, so haven't gotten back into it yet, but I will. But that's the current book I am on right now, is How Ike Led.
Fantastic. We'll have to look that up. Hey, Jeff, I want to assign us both a homework assignment so we have something to discuss next week. Let's go out and watch Oppenheimer this weekend.
I did.
You've seen it already?
I have. I saw it on Saturday, and it was fantastic.
I was hoping to see it this weekend, didn't get around to it. But since you've seen it, I don't know where it's streaming, but about 5 years ago, WGN actually had a series called called Manhattan. It's about the Manhattan Project, and it has Oppenheimer and all that in there. If you're looking for a good companion show to follow that up, it'd be interesting contrast comparison. But that was actually a really good show. It only lasted, I think, one season, obviously. But yeah, so Jeff, let's go out and watch Oppenheimer this weekend, and we can discuss it in great detail next weekend. Or next Monday.
See if I can get that in. Actually, my son went to see it tonight, so I'm interested in his feedback too.
Well, maybe we'll bring him on. You've been wanting to get him on the show for a while, so maybe we can see if he's interested, and we'll do a in-depth movie review on Oppenheimer.
Yeah, and we've got some other interested people as well for possibly coming on next week. So we'll have to stay tuned on that, because I can't wait to plug one of our guests that maybe next week, maybe not. But really cool World War II connection, really cool radio connection.
Absolutely.
See if we can hammer that down for sure.
And if we do, we will. We can always. It's not like we're going to do an hour and a half on Oppenheimer, but it might be a good 10, 15-minute conversation. Get each other's opinions. But for myself, Jeff, that's going to wrap up this episode of the What's the Scuttlebutt Podcast, your favorite World War II podcast. We want to thank Nick from Standard Issue Coffee for hanging out with us, giving us a rundown on the proper way to make coffee and how he got into it, and a little bit of a World War II. As always, we want to hear from you. Send us an email to mailcall@WTSPWorldWar2.com. That's spelled just like you see it on the old TV, WWII. So that's mailcall@WTSPWorldWar2.com. And while you're on your computer, head over to WTSPWorldWar2.com. Click on the Patreon link. Sign up and subscribe. It only costs you $1 a month. That goes a long way to support what we do here at the channel. And while you're there, you can also click on the YouTube link or simply go to youtube.com, look for D410 Media, and you can follow along and stream with us and join in on the conversation. Like we have DJ Bowen on there tonight. We have Gabe on here. We have our friends over at WLVN 1940s Radio and a few others in here. So if you want to join in on the conversation, you can ask us questions in real time, and we'll try to answer them. But for myself, Mr. Jeff Copsetta, and Nick, we want to thank each and every one of you, and we will talk to you all next week.
This has been a Digital 410